Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during this show. And that certificate is not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous sports trivia. Today, we do have a special guest. We're welcoming back Chris Prefontaine, 33 years in real estate space, is the chairman and founder of Smart Real Estate Coach, a 4-time best-selling author, a Forbes Business Council member, 3-time Inc. 5000 honoree, host of Smart Real Estate Coach podcast, ranked in the top 0.5% globally. Chris, welcome back to The Best of Investing.
Thanks, Edward. Good to be back. Good to see you as always.
Okay. Hey, quick question for you. The last part that I read, ranked in the top 0.5% globally. What does that mean? Does that mean like downloaded podcasts or what?
That's way beyond my pay grade. That would be the team, but I'm assuming it's within the real estate space. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so let's get right into it. I was looking at your website, and it says, what is buying and selling real estate on terms, TERMS, mean?
Yeah, that's a good sort of foundational question. So thank you. It just means when I came out of the crash of 08, 2008 debacle, I call it, there were sort of criteria, if you will, that I was going to operate under. And one of the sets of criteria were, how are we going to buy? And on terms means owner financing, lease purchase, or subject to existing financing. That's what on terms means. It's basically creative financing.
Gotcha. Okay. Give us a little bit of background on yourself, because we got kind of right into it, but you just mentioned about the 2008 debacle, which it's actually a good way, because it didn't. It's interesting. The real estate market didn't crash. It was kind of a prolonged decline.
Painful.
For a few years. Yeah, painful.
Painful decline that I unfortunately went through. I'll give you a high point, and you can pull me back to any part of that you want, because if I do 33 years, I would put everybody to sleep. Prior to the 2008 debacle, I ran a company that built homes. I was sort of the office and banking end of that, where I had a partner in the field. I then bought a brokerage franchise, Realty Executives. I ended up selling that in 2000 to Coldwell Banker. That was a good experience, especially at that age. I was only in my 30s. And then I started coaching people throughout the United States and Canada, not in the investment space like we do now. It's actually realtors, high income, high gross commission realtors, and do my own properties. And then that led to the crash. And then during the crash, what was the big problem for us? It was, I had 22 or 23 properties that I was signed on personally, personally guaranteeing, which people do when they do bank debt, right? And so it's just one of the many things that we do not do anymore. And that was the impetus, because that was a painful time. So since then,
let me interrupt you on that, because depending upon who you're banking with, most of the time they will make you sign off personally.
Right.
You say, if you're not going to sign off on it, we're not going to give you a loan.
Correct.
And a lot of it is more of a psychological thing. It can potentially be, it can really kind of grab you by the what.
Yep.
Because it reminded me in 2000. I think I'm going to go back. I think it was 2011. Don't quote me on that. But I had a building that was underwater, and I brought a set of keys with it. I didn't even have a set of keys to the building, even though I owned the building. It was a commercial building. And I remember walking in and talking to the banker. Now, I'd never been late, but the loan came due and it was underwater. And I just took my house keys and I put them on the table, and I just said, listen, did you want to negotiate here, or here you go. Here's the buildings, even though I had a personal guarantee on it. Yeah. Because, especially in California, I mean, to do the personal guarantee, I mean, as I understand it, that you have to go through like a big lawsuit and judicial foreclosures and all this kind of stuff. And banks don't really want to do that. Right. So how did that happen with you with regard to, you had 20 some odd properties and you personally signed on it? The loans, I presume, were with regular banks?
Yes, all but one. So I'll give you high points. Some we did short sales, worked that out with the banks. Maybe one or two went to foreclosure. We stayed alive. We didn't file bankruptcy. So it was just painful for 4 years working that all out. The private one, he flew here, met with me. To this day, I have a relationship with him. He was on my podcast. I learned a lot from him, and he was very respectful. So it was just work. It was a lessons learned, but it was a lot of work. So we just don't do it anymore.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Okay. Tell you what, we're going to go to our first commercial break here. We're the trivia questions have to do with miscellaneous sports. I've got one football question and two hockey ones, and I think are you in Boston?
I am, and if I mess up hockey because that's all I play, then I should just give it up.
Yeah. It's funny because I set up the questions without knowing, at the time who's going to be our guest. All right. So first one's a football question. Which quarterback's first pass attempt in the NFL was for an interception for a pick six touchdown, and his first completion was to himself? Same quarterback. All right. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. Edward Brown here along with my special guest, Chris Prefontaine. First trivia question. Which quarterback, we're talking the NFL, which quarterback's first pass attempt in the NFL was for an interception for a touchdown, i.e. a pick six as they call it, but his first completion was to himself?
Do we have any cheat dates? Like when did this? How is this new?
I'm gonna say it's in the 1990s.
90s.
Yeah. Now here's the interesting thing. He was actually drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, but I don't know if he even ever played for them. Here's the hint, and it'll be a big one. He ended up playing for the Green Bay Packers.
I'm striking out.
Brett Favre.
I could
So
guess.
Brett, so his first completion, what happened was it got tipped back to him, and he caught it, and then he ran for a few yards.
Interesting fact.
Kind of interesting. Oh, actually, you know what? I said the other two questions were hockey. Actually, one of them, the next one's hockey, and then the next one is actually has to do with soccer. So a little difference here.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so Chris, you're the founder of Smart Real Estate Coach. Tell us about Smart Real Estate Coach. What do you do?
Yep. It's a family company. My son-in-law and my son are involved. We have a great team all around the country now for COVID. We help train want to be or present investors in the creative niche, right? However, when I say we train, there is a whole bunch of other people that do what we do, but they mostly do it by selling courses, right? So we took it one step further. It was my frustration, Edward, coming back into the industry after the debacle of 08, and that was I wanted to have someone that like did deals with us, right? I wanted to like have someone show people how to do deals by holding hands and doing deals with them. Not, here's your course, good luck, because it sounds great and it sounds fluffy, but then real life happens. So we actually have a revenue sharing program with students. So when they enter our program, they get trained constantly, weekly, nonstop, but we're doing deals with them. Here's my seller. Can you help me call them? Here's my buyer. Here's the call. Can you help critique it? Like, we're doing the deal with them with the same end goal. Let's get that thing cashed out.
So they're almost, I mean, I don't even say they're exactly bird dogging the deals, because they're not just out of it as soon as they find it. They kind of come alongside, or you come alongside.
Yeah, good distinction, because they find it, but we tell them how, right? So we direct them to find it, then they put it in their entity or their trust, whatever it might be. So we're just a consultant in the arrangement for the revenue share. It's their deal.
Interesting. How do you, I guess each deal is probably a little different, but generally, how do you structure it? So like give me a little example.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm one of your students. Give me a tip, let's say, of how I go and find one of these deals.
Yeah. So we would plug you into, all of them do the same. They plug into our lead gen service, third party lead gen service that feeds them or their virtual assistants first, but it feeds their team the proper people to call, the sellers to call. For example, it might be this week's expires, this week's for sale by owners, this week's for rent by owners, free and clear properties, absentee owners. Those lists are provided through that third party. They then have a virtual assistant call them, so they're not wasting time on kind of like the initial call. And then that gets generated into what we call a property lead information sheet. And then they call that with our help on scripts.
And the virtual assistant, is that one of those I don't want to call it a robocall, but is it that sort of thing
Oh
where you
no,
get kind of a generic?
no,
It's
it's
a
a
real
real
person.
person, and we've actually trained them in the creative niche because a lot of other people like to do wholesaling and flipping and all that, and that's great. But it's a different. Those are, they're trying to lowball properties. We're okay paying
Yeah.
market value as long as we get our terms. So they are trained to do creative real estate.
Okay. So I'm a property owner who owns a property free and clear. Uh, what would be the generic pitch? Let's say
Yeah.
now that you've figured out that I'm a person who owns my property free
I
and clear.
just before your show talked with a student, one of our higher level students, and a seller. So it's the exact question. He has a home free and clear. He's in his early 80s, and we were talking about owner financing because he is free and clear. Now, typically on
Yeah.
owner financing, I even bought my building this way, but typically on owner financing, we do principal only payments, zero interest in an environment now that's unheard of. So he said, well, how much down? I said, I usually don't put down or interest because I'm usually buying from sellers who want the best price and can take it over time. He came back around and said, okay, I need to sleep on this because it was a totally new concept in theory for him. He just thinks conventional down payment, interest rate. So
Yeah.
we probably can pay the most for the properties if we get our term. So people that can wait, and that could be for estate planning reasons, tax planning reasons.
Yeah.
That's usually what you find in the free and clear.
And the for the benefit, what's generally the interest rate that let's say for this 80-year-old man? What
Well, it's
would interest
generally
rate would be good?
zero. Ideally, if we get them to their price and we put nothing down and we do zero, we do principal
Yeah.
only payments. Ideally, um,
Yeah.
but like with my building, he was not the conventional house purchase; it was a building. So, and he was very savvy in real estate. So I said, I pay little to nothing down and I pay zero interest. He nearly fell off his chair. He was a conventional real estate investor. So here's what we did though,
Yeah.
win-win. We did 18 months of principal only. Then we took that remaining amount and amortized at the rate he wanted. We both won. We both were happy. As long as it's a win-win like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So the risk he takes is that you pay for so many months and then walk. Well, of course, you walk away if you're paying zero interest and it's all principal. At least he's gotten some cash, but he's got to trust you on that. Tell you what, well, let's get to our second break here. I do want to make a mention here also for the Transcendence Theater. You got to check them out. I've gone to a lot of their performances. It's sort of like off Broadway. bestnightever.org. Check them out. They got some awesome performances. All right, here's our second trivia question. This is a hockey question.
Oh,
All right, so Chris, you better know this one, right? Because you're a Boston Bruins fan, probably. That's not the hint, though. Okay, the highest scoring pair of brothers in the NHL were which two brothers? All right. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with correct answer wins that tanning certificate, which, by the way, is worth over $100. Again, here's the trivia question. The highest scoring pair of brothers in the NHL were which two brothers? Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Chris Prefontaine of Wicked Smart Coach or Smart Real Estate Coach. I looking at your T-shirt and
okay,
Wicked Smart. I know that there's a phrase in Boston, Wicked. So I know about that. Okay, let's do the trivia question first. Hockey. The highest scoring pair of brothers in the NHL were which two brothers?
you hinted Bruins, but if you didn't say that, I
No, I know. That's what I said. That's
good.
I only said Bruins because you're come from Boston,
Yeah.
so you must be a Bruins fan.
What comes to mind, my
No,
knee jerk is the Hows because they had their dad and the two brothers. No,
no, that I would have thought that too. No, Wayne and Brent Gretzky.
I didn't know there was
Wayne
the
scored.
Brent Gretzky.
I know it's almost a trick question. Wayne had 2,857. I guess they do it by points, and Brent had 4. So a total of 2,861.
That's a trick question.
It's so funny. It kind of reminds me of like the highest in baseball. The most home runs were by Hank and Tommy Aaron. That wasn't 4 home runs. I think he had like 20 or something, 700. And it's funny because I on my sports show I've interviewed Al Attles from the old basketball years, and he's so funny. He says, "Yep." He goes, "Yep. One time, me and Wilt Chamberlain scored 117 points."
Yeah, that's
I love
that. He was even there.
He was playing with him. All right. So Chris, going back to what we were talking about before, you had an 80-year-old owner of a building, owned it free and clear. And I'm thinking, when you're 80 years old, you probably don't want to have to deal with tenants' toilets and all that kind of stuff. So uh, what he's doing is basically just kind of live off the cash flow that you're paying him.
Yeah, he's actually out of state, so that was his motivation. He kept saying in the phone call, "I just want to be done." And he
Hmm.
wants such a price that I said to him, "Look, this is good for the listeners to know that sometimes you just got to take it away." I said, "Look, it sounds like you might want to try conventionally first. I don't think the market's going to give you that, but you might want to try that, then come back to us as a plan B." And I kept trying to take it away, and he kept coming back because reality is we probably can pay the most. The guy that I bought the building from, real quickly, he probably knew. He's since passed, and I think he knew that something was going on, so that his son and daughter would get a son and wife, widow, would get a check versus owning the property. And I think that's why he did it. He did it for
Yeah.
tax reasons too, but I think so. That'd be my gut.
Yeah, because a lot of times the kids don't necessarily either know or want to get involved with the asset, but if they have good cash flow coming in,
Right.
plus in theory, if they needed cash, they could always sell the note if potentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course, yeah. Depending upon the terms, depends on how big of a discount they might have to take. Excuse me. So let's see. What else we got here? So where to find those homeowners you want to sell on the terms? Where do you find those homeowners?
So that would be the tied to that thing we talked about earlier, which is the live
The third
feed
party.
of the lead sources. Yeah. But there's all kinds of different ones. Like we just talked about free and clear, right? Just because I like that. But there's also absentee owners. So I love absentee owners, like people out of state. So in your area, there are X amount of properties that people out of state. Those are great. More so since COVID, they're more apt to sell. But they were always one of my favorites.
So are those people who are, I don't say vacation homes, but they're just investors?
Could be, or
Okay.
investments. Yeah, we also like the list. Speaking of investors, we like the list that has 2 or more properties owned by a company or individual. We've had good luck with that list because look, over time, as you know, Edward, real estate changes, right? So if you get someone that owns, you get me and I own 5 properties today, I might love them, but call me in 5 years, you might have, so it's very much worth your time to work all the lists. So you have a variety of lead flow at all times in any market.
And are you buying in all states?
We buy in 3 or 4 primarily. Our students are East Coast to West Coast. So there will be students, because we do allow this, there will be students who go, hey, I don't really want to be in your program, either money-wise or time-wise or whatever. But once in a while, I run into a deal. Yes, we can do those deals. And they kind of act as boots in the ground for us. And they get a small referral fee instead of a big rev split. But it's good because they get to see what's going on. We're doing one of those in Florida right now.
Interesting. We should talk because I've got a number of notes that. But the thing is, I guess you're only dealing with once you own the property, right?
Typically, but I'm happy to chat with you. Yep, I'm happy to chat with you.
Yeah.
Good things.
Yeah, because I've got some where I've actually done the foreclosure, so now I own it.
Oh,
and I've actually had like this one guy wants to make some kind of a deal, but well, we'll have to talk about that.
I would love to chat with you because we have another entity that just does that.
Okay, very good. Okay, so the how do you create 3? Well, you know what? We're gonna go to a break here pretty soon, and this question is probably going to take a lot more detail. Let's see here. How do you make your business and deals recession resistant?
Here's what I tell everyone, because I hear people say recession proof. I don't think there's any such thing, but you can make it resistant by understanding creative real estate, because there's one thing constant real estate we all know, it's going to constantly change. We kind of just alluded to that when I said the market does that, right? Okay. So if you know that, instead of trying to time the market and I got to wait till this goes up or this goes down, you're going to wait forever and or get it wrong because the billionaires don't get it right. What you can do is understand how to do creative real estate and solve problems for sellers or help them accomplish goals that, the market won't help them accomplish. Then you're sort of recession resistant because you're not going to get caught up in all that. And the other way is to make sure you have long terms, Edward. Long term.
Okay. All right. When we get back, remind me to ask you about these buyers, or either you or your students. Are they buying for fix and flip or rentals or whatever? Okay. All right. Third trivia question. This one's a soccer one. Which country? And I don't know if this is correct, so we're going to give people a lot of leeway on this one. Which country was the last undefeated one in the World Cup? That's our trivia question. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing with Edward Brown, me, your host, along with my special guest, Chris Prefontaine. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. Edward Brown here, along with Chris Prefontaine. Our third trivia question, sports. This one's a soccer question. Which country was the last undefeated one in the World Cup?
I would be taking a dot because I don't watch soccer. I mean, so I'm not in this one.
Okay, New Zealand.
Wow.
I don't know. I think it was like 15 years ago or something. I again, we're going to give people a lot of grace on this one because if you read it on the internet, it's got to be true, right? Excuse me. Okay. So Chris, for your students, yourself, et cetera, when you're buying these properties with great creative financing, are you fixing and flipping them, or are you turning them into rentals? What's the end goal?
Yeah, primarily without getting advanced. We start off with rent to own, Edward. And I want to make a big distinction here because this is another thing that caused me to go into this. There are a whole bunch of people that do this out there in the industry as investors and educators, and they do it incorrectly because their conversion rate is about 20%. They get 20% of the buyers to the finish line. That's awful, morally, ethically, and otherwise awful. So we have about a 2 to 10% failure rate. So we convert most of our buyers because we have such a strenuous process. My son, Nick, has designed that. So most of ours are rent to own with true buyers that need time, not a renter with a goal someday to maybe buy a house and they had messed up credit for 40 years. You know what I mean? Facetiously. So these are, post-COVID, people leaving their JOB to go start their own business. They have good credit, they have good cash, but they're not financeable yet. They need a couple of years of what the bank calls seasoning in most cases. So we're dealing with true buyers that have a down payment and need time to qualify. And that could be for seasoning or credit.
Now, if you're not getting a super special deal from the seller when you're buying the property, where's the big advantage unless you're charging over market value to the end buyer?
This answers your question earlier that you said, let's talk about, and that's the 3 paydays, because there's magic in them. And here's how they work. The buyer comes in with a down payment, payday 1. The buyer every single month is going to pay us X, and we're going to be paying less than that to either the homeowner or the underlying debt on the property. So there's a delta there every month. So the longer that term is, the better for us, obviously. Third, there's a cash out we call payday 3 at the end. Well, picture where that comes from. Number 1, a small markup, but number 2, all of the principal pay down accrued during the term of the deal. So if you take I'll give you a metric that'll blow most people's minds. If you take a $200,000 house and it's free and clear and you buy it with principal only pay down, even if you mark it up a teeny bit because of the principal pay down criteria, if you have at least a 4-year term, you buy it for at least $200 or higher, and you have a monthly payment of about $950 or higher principal only, that's a 6-figure deal in 4 years. All our deals are pretty lucrative. 6 figures.
Okay, so $900 a month
principal
times principal payments only times 12 is $10,800.
$10,000. So say it's $40,000 over the course of the term.
Okay, but now if the seller is selling you the house for $200, he's getting basically a 5%, 5.5% return. Gross.
He's getting nothing.
If they're, let's say, putting the money down.
Yeah, he or she's getting nothing on the interest rate. They're just getting nothing down either. They want closure.
Yeah.
The one I'm thinking of wanted closure, moving out of state, retiring. Hey, can you just do that owner financing thing? I'm out of here. So it's for people that can wait and want all the money. The market wasn't giving it to them.
Okay, because they probably, like you said, the FSBOs and all that, they've tried to sell it and nobody's coming in.
This particular one was on for 2 teens or a little higher. The realtor couldn't sell it. It was an expired. He called me back after months and months of meeting him. He said, hey, can you and your son come do that owner financing thing? And that was about $136,000 profit on a 183 purchase. Just think about that for a second. It's because of the principal.
Oh yeah, no. From your buyer, yeah. I mean, from you guys, if you can structure those deals, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I can understand it. And again, sometimes it's like, what do they call it? Seller's fatigue or something, where they just And I mean, if they've been sitting around for, let's say, a year getting nothing,
right,
because they've tried to sell it and they can't, This is one way to just sell it, get out
It's
from
time to
underneath
go,
it,
maybe, or
and
whatever. That's what we get a lot.
yeah,
And there's actually a list now, Edward, that you can buy tired landlords. They're like, you can buy a list of anything now. Tired landlords is a list.
tiredly.
Crazy.
How do they find? How do they find out if they're
That's a good one.
tired?
Probably time up. I don't know.
Gotcha. And before we forget, because I always want to remind everybody, because you've got your wealth of knowledge, how do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I appreciate it. They gave me a link for your tribe here, your listeners, to get our free book, and it is truly free. We don't charge shipping; we just ship it. It's the physical book.
Yeah.
Go to wickedsmartbooks.com/Edward. That's it. You'll get a free book.
Oh,
Very simple. You can also, I'm big on free, Edward, just because I don't want people to feel like, oh, I gotta go take this action. So if you don't mind listening to my Boston accent for 55 or so minutes, there's a free workshop. Go to smartrealestatecoach.com/masters class, and you can go do that at your own time.
yeah. I was just in Tennessee last week for a diversified mortgage expo, and it was pretty good. And I was meeting some people who were fairly new in the note business, and some of these guys they said that they paid like $35,000 to some other people to learn the business, and some people actually said, I said, well, what do you think? Was it worth it? And they said, yeah, it was.
Well,
So,
think about it. If you do, and I don't know I know the note business somewhat, but I can only talk to us. If you look at our paydays, right, they range from 45 grand low to 350 was our new record. It used to be 250 per deal. So if you have to educate yourself a little bit in that process, how many of those deals do you need to do to make it worth it? Not many at all.
Yeah, no, that's true. When we come back, I want to hear about that $350,000 deal, because that sounds pretty exciting. All right, you're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be back with some closing comments. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Chris Prefontaine, smart real estate coach. So tell us about this $350,000 profit that was your record now.
Aside from the profit, coincidental to what we were talking about off air, it worked with our values too, Edward. One of them, our values, is to conduct all transactions with the highest integrity. We caught wind of a student that had left the community that really botched up a deal. And in doing so, he was going to unwind and walk away from it. And in doing so, he would hurt the seller and hurt an investor that I actually knew. So we said, look, we need to step up. It was painful. We had to catch up HOA for, I don't know, $5 grand. We had to bring the mortgage up to date, which was like 35 grand. We had to get a squatter out because he put the wrong buyer in. He just made a lot of mistakes because it didn't come through us. So once we did that, it took about 9 or so months, and our payday 3 was about 329 grand or so. So it was actually higher than 350. This deal was probably a 360 or 370, all 3 payday deal. But it was painful going through it because every lesson you could have, the squatter did things that they weren't supposed to do in the HOA. It was upside down, like all kinds of weird stuff. But that's the power of the 3 paydays, though. Really, that one just happened to be a home run, like yours, you were sharing.
Yeah. Well, I could see, you find owners who are just tired, and they, life is too short. They want to move on. It's not like they're just giving it away to you.
Right.
You're paying, but it's going to be profitable to you because you're going to be able to structure it. I like those rent to own, because the tenant has a big incentive to keep up the property.
Big time.
If he's really
their own. Yeah. Or else they lose their down payment, right? It's very, very clear. Yeah. And you're also helping the owner. Like one of the subject to ones we did recently, that means the mortgage stays in place in the past owner's name for the listeners. They were getting divorced. Yeah. One's in the deed, one's in the mortgage. They're not getting along. Like you're fixing that problem for them. The credit was getting trashed. They were 2 months behind. So we came in and fixed that. We still own that house to this day. So it's usually a win-win-win when you conduct these deals.
Gotcha. And it sounds like you kind of wrapped the other one around. You did a wraparound where you were collecting a certain amount of money, but then you're paying a smaller amount to the existing first mortgage.
In that case, we don't transfer title. We can, yes, if we have no term ticking, but in that case, we still are in it with a rent-to-own client, but we can turn her around to finance her and wrap it anytime. Yep.
Yeah. It gets a little complicated for some people to understand how wrap mortgages work. Yeah. All right, we have just a couple of minutes here. What do you want to cover in the last minute and a half?
I don't know if I've ever said this on your show, but recently I said this because I think it works. It's a simple, I'll call it a 3-step formula, but it's just 3 things that I want to mention that I don't care what business you're in, they will work. And we tend to get too caught up in all these shiny objects. And they are, number 1, pick a industry. Let's say real estate for now. Let's just assume real estate. So pick a niche in real estate that you can get excited about. Like ours is a win-win-win. If you like that, great. Number two, pick a group or a person or a club or something that you can get behind that has the same values as you, morally, ethically. You like their lifestyle. I mean, they didn't screw up relationships to get to where they are, because people have done that.
Yeah.
So you find that person, whether it's us or someone else. And then third, you put the blinders on for 3 to 7 years, because there's so much marketing bombarding you right now out there, especially on social, which we don't go on, but people do. So you're getting bombarded with all these get rich quick tomorrow versus doing what I said, 3 to 7 years, blinders on. They're not going to steer you wrong. They've already been where you want to be. Just follow that for 3 to 7 years. It's easier said than done.
No, I like that because it's easy to get distracted. Look at like you said, the next shiny object, or we say squirrel.
Yeah. Oh, no. So rehab, all this stuff. Okay, great. But you are going to be on a treadmill with most of those. So just be careful and find someone, like I said, that you can run with.
Yeah. And unfortunately, not unfortunate for me, but I benefited because somebody else was too distracted on other deals. All right, Chris Prefontaine, stay with us. We got our thoughts for the day. All right, here we go. So someone asked me, if I were stranded on a desert island, what book would I bring? And I said, How to Build a Boat. And excuse me, start each day with a positive thought like, I can go back to bed in just 17 short hours. I like that. All right. Audience, tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.